Good evening, everybody. This is Christian Oesch. I'm the president from the Swiss Association WIR. We are extremely excited to have everyone present here tonight. We have a world-class panel tonight, and would like to welcome everyone. We have registrations for this live webinar actively out of 31 nations around the world, representing actually, except of one continent, every continent. So this is really exciting. I'm going to change this back here. I would like to especially thank our Hoch 2 TV, online TV, for providing the live stream in English. And I also would like to thank out of Italy, the web TV station 9MQ. So this is fantastic to get that kind of support from those platforms. I like to just kind of maybe start off with a short replay from what happened in the first panel. In our first panel, that was February 19th, we had registrations for the live webinar. The webinar itself from 36 nations, and we then had actually participants on the live stream from 154 nations around the world. It was absolutely phenomenal. So tonight is another opportunity to learn a lot of new information. We're prepared for this. We have a fantastic panel. We're going to let everyone introduce itself here in a few minutes. And with this, I'd like to also especially thank the nonprofit organization in Italy. It's called the Guardians of the Sky, or the Guardiani del Cielo. I'm not sure if I pronounced this right. This is a nonprofit organization that is making an effort to send a letter about what we're covering here, and so to every single mayor in all their communes across Italy. That is a 7,880 communes and mayors. Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. And this is what this is all about, is to get to the bottom of everything and then share it with our networks. Today's webinar will provide a short summary of the latest lab analysis. This will be presented from Hansjörg Grether, the lab analysis that are about those mysterious strings and filaments. And then maybe ganz brief, I shared with you that we launched a criminal complaint with the public prosecutor against the Swiss government because they didn't want to spend any time meeting with us and look at our analysis and our findings. So I can share with you that we haven't heard a single word. Not surprising, but we will change this around the world, because the information that we will cover tonight, I think, is going to get some people move, I believe. Today's webinar is also designed to educate, inform, and inspire action. Action not just in the United States or in Switzerland, but action around the world. And it's going to be about our environmental modification concerns. So I couldn't think of more experienced people on the panel than we have here tonight. Tonight's webinar is specifically to help us focus on separating facts from fiction. I can share with you that we did a pre-webinar last night with this panel, just to kind of discuss things under us, because there are things changing really fast, and we're all learning from each other. We're still learning about filaments that we're sharing and have been talking about, and so it is an extremely complex, it's a complex situation here, and we will not have enough time tonight. It will definitely be taking a day or two to really scratch the surface, but we'll do our best tonight to get into those details so you can better understand what's happening here with those environmental modification problems. The panel discussion tonight will focus on scientific evidence, expert insights, and then hopefully also we'll share some of the potential solutions. The next steps will involve international networking. We already talked about this, what's happening in Italy and other nations, but our neighbors just south from us, from Switzerland, Italy is doing a phenomenal job. There's various nonprofit organizations that are networking, and we will learn more about it. We will share this over our website, and we will also let Jay and Jim and Reinette share that in their network over in the United States. This webinar tonight is all about collaboration, grassroots movements, additional legal action, and hopefully a whole lot more live webinars and international panelists that can help us address this concept and those issues in great detail. We're going to go to this great part right now. Reinette, I'm going to start off with you. Ladies first. You have an opportunity to share in brief about yourself here with our live webinar participants around the world.
Thank you, Christian, and thanks, esteemed guests. It's really lovely to be here. My name is Reinette Senum, and I come from a small town in Northern California. I'm a former two-time mayor and city council member, and I've been an activist for well over 20 years, aware of geoengineering for between 15 to 20 years. And it has been over the last 2 years when we launched our nonprofit called Gen 7 and the Save Our Skies initiative, that when we decided to actually take geoengineering to the courts, take the perpetrators to the courts, and when I had to ensure that every belief I've had over the last 15 years could hold water and have standing in the courts, that narrative fell apart. And I'll be speaking to that a little bit more later on in the webinar today. So thank you, Christian.
Thank you so much, Reinette. Appreciate it. Jay Reynolds, we're extremely pleased to have you here with us. Would you like to go and share a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Christian. My name is Jay Reynolds, and I live in Florida, USA. My experience with the subject of chemtrails and to some extent the webs is 28 years. So I was at the very inception from the first day. And I have a good historical background that I could offer. I'm a former engineer. I'm retired now. And I also work with with syntropic agriculture and permaculture on my own farm here in Florida.
Thank you so much, Jay. We're going to hear a bunch more from you. Now, the one and the only Jim Lee. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We're very, very pleased to have you tonight. Jim, tell us about yourself.
Thanks for having me. And what a great group of individuals to have to, share this with. My name's James Lee, better known as Jim Lee, infamously known as Jim Lee. I'm from Sumter, South Carolina. I've been a anti-geoengineering and weather modification activist for over 20 years. I'm a public educator. I create interactive websites because people learn in different ways. So I have articles, I have videos, I have timelines, I have maps, all kinds of different ways for you to learn about this topic. I've done my homework so that you can basically learn at your own pace. Not everybody wants to watch, lengthy hour-long videos to learn about this. So, I'll be providing links to that during my presentation and kind of just crunch this down to the nitty gritty of what we're dealing with in the skies and what people, some of the misconceptions we have, but more importantly, offering pragmatic solutions to what we're dealing with and why it has not worked up to this point.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Jim. Looking forward to all the great information you're going to be sharing with us. And now, my dear friend, Hansjörg Grether, do you want to just also share a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Thank you, Christian, and hello, everybody. I'm a chemical engineer with experience of about 35 years in analytics, especially spectroscopy and structure elucidation. I was heading and managing more than 5 or 10 groups in parallel in the biggest company of a chemical company worldwide, BASF. And after my retirement, it's now 7 years or 8 years already. I'm still working in spectroscopy in a small company, teaching people method development, structural elucidation, preparing companies for getting the right methods to control, to make quality control and to control research. And they're still teaching at the university, sometimes with structural elucidation based on infrared spectroscopy. And live in Switzerland as Christian and love mountains and biking.
That's great. Thank you so much, Hansjörg. We are all very excited about what you have found out with your laboratory team in the background. There's some amazing things that just kind of helps us more and more, going deeper, validating things here. So I'm coming back to you, Reinette. We started this whole thing. When we first got started, that was a few years ago, with the first interview between us two, and where, to where we are today, right?
Right.
April, 5th, 25. I know that's amazing, actually. And I think one thing we both would agree on is we keep learning every single day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So-
It's been a long journey. So what I'd like to do is kind of lay out where I was. The transformation over the last 2 years has been shocking to me, actually, jaw-dropping, and why I've come to these conclusions. There's a lot more conclusions than I can share, but I'll give you the 30,000-foot elevation before Jay and Jim go into more of the details as well. So what I am going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen right here real fast. So first and foremost, there we go. Let's see, do you see that right now, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me hit play here. So I just want to say my involvement in politics has always been based upon the 7-generation principle, which is every decision we make today should serve 7 generations from now. The geoengineering catastrophe has been taking about 3.5 decades, and it's looking like it'll take about 3.5 decades to really fully recover from it. I want to say that this is back in 2016 when I had in my mind a certain narrative about geoengineering. And in fact, I was so outspoken about it as a city council member, as a mayor, that since 2015 and 16, there's been all of these satirical articles about me. Nevada City, which is our hometown, enforces first chemtrail free zone. I got a lot of calls and emails about that, asking people back in the 2015s and 16s, how did you do it? There's more satirical stuff here. Nevada County celebrates its longest consecutive chemtrail-free day, all poking fun at me. It's actually quite funny. I'll take it as a compliment. We even have supposedly a chemtrail film festival coming to Nevada City, more satirical stuff. So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because I had a certain belief system. And as I said 2 years ago, when I decided to take geoengineering perpetrators to the courts, that narrative that I fully believed in fell apart. So I want to say, what were some of the things I fell for? Some of it was the high bypass turbofan engines do not create persistent contrails. Just go into chat, go onto Grok, do your own research. You'll see very clearly, yes, they do make persistent contrails. HARP, high frequency active research program. Same thing. I thought that they were moving storms, but you really look into it. It was Jim Lee who woke me up saying, Reinette, we do not have the capacity in the whole entire United States, even the world, to steer a storm because there's so much energy in the storm itself. I suggest you go on Grok, Chat GPT, do your own research, and you'll see that the HARP story, the narrative, doesn't hold water as well. Now, also, I have seen whistleblowers over the years. I gave them all the benefit of the doubt. One of them, of course, was a woman by the name of Kristen Megan, who I've interviewed myself. I believe that she was a whistleblower. And sure enough, here we have back in Metabunk, when people were asking for her to show the receipts, the evidence, the proof that she said she had regarding chemicals that she knew were being sprayed as chemtrails through the military. This is what she had to say, that basically she wasn't referring to chemtrails. It was a different situation. And she completely backed down from that story. I was shocked to find that out. Then we also have what's called the National Gag Order, National Weather Gag Order on weather reporters. This was the reason we were told year after year, and we're still being told why we don't know about the clandestine programs is because there is a National Weather Service gag order on reporting such things. Sure enough, I found out this is absolutely not true. We went to the horse's mouth, which were the attorneys involved in a behind-the-scenes negotiation collective bargaining agreement with the union. Had nothing to do with reporting on geoengineering or weather modification, had to do with internal dialogues and agreements. So that was also put to the side. as I like to say, we have been looking for essentially what Jim refers to as the needle in the haystack. Are there clandestine programs? Have no doubt. We have decades worth of history out, and there's nothing that's been put into place to stop these clandestine programs. That's its own issue. We'll get into that. However, when I started really looking at what is whitening our skies and who are we going to take to court, ultimately we realized it was not the needle we should be looking for, but it was actually, it's the haystack. We'll get into that later. And why does this matter? Essentially, you're going to be seeing here later on, it's the number of commercial aviation flights that are rising exponentially. And in fact, I can tell you, when I was a child in the 1970s, 1980s, these are global airline passengers per year. We have someone on Jim Lee's climateviewer.com who produced this just today, or he was yesterday, saying, look, this is where we really are. When I was looking at the skies in the 70s and 80s, I was sailing as a child. I sailed every day. I looked at the skies. 70s and 80s, clear blue skies. Fantastic. Never saw these streaks, these persistent contrails. When I look at the number of airline passengers per year in the 70s and 80s, not so bad. Then we look at right before COVID struck, right? And we're at over 4.5 billion passengers. Drop down. When we had our stay-at-home orders, do you all remember how blue and gorgeous the skies were? Those skies were from my childhood, which pretty much correlate when I was sailing as a child. Now you look at this, and you can clearly see that's absolutely skyrocketed to where we are now, which is, what is it, 7 billion, 8 billion, who knows? It's huge. So this is the basis of what's really, really going on. Every single year, our clouds are going to continue to get worse. The whitening is going to get worse, the persistent contrails, because commercial aviation is rising. So then this is the doozy. Only 20% of the global citizens have actually flown. So we're going to be expecting an exponential rise to continue with commercial aviation, which means at some point you're just not going to be seeing the moon or the stars, and the sun's going to be behind a haze for a long, long time. If you look here, America actually has the most flights. You can look at our airlines. So this is why we're getting so clouded out all the time. And this also comes from Climate Viewer chat. I suggest you guys get on Telegram if you want to get to the nitty gritty. The jet fuel changed back in those late 1990s. And that is one of the reasons why we're seeing more persistent contrails all the time. And as this also talks about how essentially we have so many, let me see if I can move this right now, nearly 1.5 million barrels of jet fuel per day is being burned, 10,000 particles in every cubic centimeter. That's a toxic poisoning. Now, this is interesting. This is a screenshot I took 2 years in the morning time. This was from ADSB Exchange that shows you live what the commercial aviation looks like. And then this was just last week in the morning. You can see there's an increase just from this alone. And what's really fascinating, as I've learned, is those light pink planes are the ones up in the stratosphere. And that's up in the stratosphere means that the soot and the exhaust that's up there stays up there a lot longer. And this is a real serious issue, but that's the increase. When I started to Save Our Skies, there's 39 million flights approximately. Now we're between 43 to 45 million flights a year. That's just insane. And you can see private jet flights per person are far worse than commercial flights, but it's still an issue. And just real briefly, the silver bullet does not exist. It's going to be require many silver BBs, and I will get to that when we're ready to wrap up. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes. I appreciate it.
That is just great. Thanks so much for this summary and also introduction to where we're going tonight. I have just a few questions before we move to Hansjörg here. I'd like for you to maybe give us a little bit of feedback. Since the first panel, you and I agreed that it's so complex that we kind of misaddressed with the geoengineering, weather manipulation, that it's actually everything that we're talking about. It's really in the umbrella of environmental modifications, right? So what is that you have experienced since our first panel dealing with this complex understanding? Reinette?
So I thought you were talking about Hansjörg. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. No. Oh, okay. So, well, I mean, first of all, this is the thing that's really important in the work we're all doing, and that is to have very malleable minds. And so what I did was I put an open letter out there to the Trump administration, to also some, to Hegseth, to Bobby Kennedy Jr., to Tulsi Gabbard, saying, hey, folks, we have a wild, wild west happening, essentially. We have, all these possible artificial webs coming out. They could be weaponized. There seems to be a weaponization of everything around our world. So I sent this open letter to the White House, to all of the administrative folks, and we've heard nothing whatsoever. It's gone silent. I did not really expect a response. I was hoping for a response, but the good news is that we continue our work, and we're not going to stop. And that's why we're having these panels, is to actually build the awareness and as well as build the base, the global base.
Yeah, and maybe I can expand here. It's just, since that panel, I obviously received tremendous amount of feedback from around the world. And I got the most feedback from Jim Lee that's today with us. I'm extremely, extremely happy that we're connecting around the world and have exchange, of our thoughts. And so I'm excited, for Jim's time, and also obviously, of course, Jay, by them helping us understand how deep this goes, and also for helping us maybe clear some of the half-truths, misinformation, and even absolute lies. So for us, this is exciting for everybody to be here taking their time. I'm going to go ahead, Hansjörg, I'm going to go ahead and share with you what you have prepared, or share with you everybody here tonight. I'm going to put this up here. Can everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you, Hansjörg, first I'm going to get this thing launched. So, good. I want to share this for the people that maybe haven't had a chance to follow us in the first one. Just here are the filament examples that were, accumulated from northern Italy all the way to northern Germany, across Switzerland, Austria, the Netherlands, Belgium. So those were found in the month of October back in 2022. And we have gotten samples, again, from all those countries I just mentioned. Here are a few images of those filaments, and here a few more. And we're going to make, obviously, this presentation also part of the website, so people can come here and come and download this and can research this at their own time. There's a little clip I want to show with you. You won't hear the sound. So that's that. And I'm going to have you start here, Hansjörg, with the summary of our investigation of those mysterious threats. So you can tell everybody about the latest information.
Okay, that's a summary of the investigation, and this time it's included also the LCMS results we got last week. And I have to add that the following slides are not completely covering what we have all detected and analyzed. It's only an extraction so that we can really quickly see what is going on with the analysis and what we have found. So we have clearly put out that these threads are not made from synthetic polyamides, because based on the FTIR spectrum, we see that there's completely different to these technical or commercial products called nylon, nylon 6, nylon 6,6, and so on. And there are neither polyethylene terephthalates, polyethylene, all these technical polymers can be excluded. We have found some metals, most in traces, except for a slightly elevated aluminum value. And by using scanning electron microscope, we have found that these fibers are inside hollow, and the diameter ranges from 4 to 5 to 6 micrometers, the outer, and the inner is close to 2 to 3 nanometers. And using embedding techniques and cross-cut material sections, we can show that these nanoscaled fibers are filled with materials. They are hollow again and filled with materials. That brought us to the idea to make solvent extraction. We used a mixture of 3 solvents, and later on we analyzed it by FTIR, GCMS, and LCMS, and all together we came nearly to 50 different substances, including all aliphatic, aromatic systems, cyclic, benzene derivative, ketones, and epoxides, histamine derivatives, and by LCMS we also found nitrosamines derivative, to name only a few. And regarding the worldwide applied hazard labeling system, which is called GHS, Global Harmonized System of Classification, we saw that most of these substances were really dangerous and difficult. If you look now to the red rhombus, this is an international agreed system to characterize chemicals in terms of toxicity and to see what we have found to become later on to all these substances. But in overall, this is an overview what we have found. Next. This is an IR spectrum where we clearly see the difference between the technical polyamides from nylon type compared to the red line. The red line is our fiber, where we found, I think that is in Switzerland, northern part of Switzerland. Next slide, please. And this is an expanded region, what we call fingerprint. And if you now look to the red line compared to all the other lines, you can see nothing has to do with our fibers. It's completely different. That means that the technical fibers or technical products, the nylons, which are used in very multi applications like toothbrush, like fibers for sailing and functional clothing, is different from that what we have found on the soil, on the nature, everywhere where people collected it. Next slide. And this is a directly comparison of a data bank research with nearly, I think, 500,000 spectra. And you see that if you look at the overlay, it's nearly identical with a silk. And the silk is built up natural protein fibers with mostly three typical amino acids: glycine, serine, and aline. And that was the most common approach we got by spectroscopy. Next one. This is a comparison of all these samples we got here, nearly 6 from different places in Switzerland. And you can see that all the fibers were plus minus identical. Next slide, please. This is the elemental overview. We used ICP-MS, inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. Left hand, you see the carbon and hydrogen-nitrogen distribution, which is typical for polyamides, with sulfur, which came to the conclusion maybe sulfur-containing amino acid has been used, maybe cysteine. In the middle, we have all the elements, aluminum a little bit elevated. We have also some magnesium, and we have also some iron. And on the right side, in the blue rectangle, all the other elements, which were all below 5 ppm. Next slide. And this is a first picture we took from a collection, and this is a scanning electron microscope. Left-hand side, you see typical how these fibers look like, single, sometimes bundled. And on the right-hand side, there's a clear proof for me that it couldn't be spider webs, because this is a glued together, which is typical for a process, extrusion process, which doesn't fully work. You see a big part glued together, and from there out came the fibers. So what our conclusion was, never spider fibers, because never a spider would make such a glued thing together. Next one. This is a preparation tool. It's inside the chamber, the measuring chamber of the scanning electron microscope. We made 2 preparations. We embedded the material and cut it as long and thin slices till we reached a region where all these fibers were vertically packed together and then cut it directly so that we can open and look inside. Left-hand side, you see the red positions are the marker, and on the right-hand side, you have the black marker where we found the right places. Next picture, please. And this is the ones we got with, this is 800 magnification. And what you can see, all these fibers are hollow inside. Some are filled with something which comes a little bit out, but are more than half of them which are not filled with material. And the white spots are the marker which remains a little bit on the surface. And then on the right-hand side, there we have more or less the same thing. The magnification is now nearly 1,000. And what you can see in the middle, we have a fiber lengthwise cut it. And you see completely it's hollow, and this time nothing is filled inside. Next, please. Again, we have looked where we can prove and see something about the filled material. You see 2,000 times magnification left-hand side. There's already a fiber which looks like it's filled inside. And this was again, or afterwards, magnified by 6,000 times. And this gave us a clear picture that there's material inside. Next slide. Oh, the patent, yes. And then Philip Zeller came in, right, Christian, and told us, well, he found some patents. I think the one was filed in 2004 and granted in 2013. And here is described how they do that, nanoscale polymers, which is used extruded by electrospinning processes and can be applied over land or plants to see it existing there, and use as the ground is used as a counter electrode. And the more surprising thing is that these things can be targeted to hands, feet, arms, legs, or any other soil any other material which is on the soil. Next one. The older one, this is not the same patent family, I think, but it's already in 1999 filed and granted in 2008. And there it's described how they do that, where the nozzle is a positive electrode and the ground is a negative electrode. And the pictures they took at that time showed more or less similar fibers with hollow insides we found. These materials, I think, has several layers around, and we don't know if we have layers on our fibers, but the picture and the way how it is produced is the same. Next one. This is where we have tried to make a clear picture about the extraction by IR. You see we have extracted over 4 different samples from different places in Switzerland. And next slide, please. You can see that all these things already are showing by the functional groups, which is typical for infrared spectroscopy, that the ester and ketones are there. We have aromatic and carbon acids, we have amino acids, monomers, we have ether and everything. The red line again is the thread without extraction. And you see the difference between extraction, what comes out, and what remains in the fiber. Next one. This is the GCMS findings. We have more than 35 or even 40 different substances found in the volatile part of the extraction, and all these substances are listed there. We have gone through, have found the GIS labeling, and now I show afterwards a few selected because these are the most important ones. Next, please. This is one epoxy acrylate. And if you look now at the red rhombus, which is a labeling, you see it's highly toxic. You see the skull with the bones. And there it's toxic in contact with skin and even with eyes. and can make allergy reactions and is really toxic if inhaled. Next one. This is a more cyclic hydrocarbon, but anyway, highly flammable, corrosive, toxic reactions, and maybe it's also irritant. Next one. Here is something really strange. We tried to find this substance in any database for the labeling, and nothing was found. The product is only registered in the US, but in the European community, if you look in the ECHA-Chem, in the database, there is no results found and no classification is known. Next one. This is a typical example of a short hydrocarbon. And we have also here very dangerous GIS symbols, flammable and toxic for human beings. Next one. This is a histamine derivative we found. The spectrum, I have to explain it. The spectrum on top is always the spectrum of the sample, and the spectrum below is always the spectrum of the database. In this case, it's NIST, National Institute of Standards in the US, which has, I think, one of the biggest MS databases worldwide. Next, please. Typical aromatic benzene derivative. You can see it's also very dangerous. It has flammable, it has health hazard, and even it's a hazard for environmental. And it's clear the spectrum of the sample looks very similar to the spectrum which is given by the NIST. Next one. And now we came to the LCMS, which was made with time of flight, quadruple MS. We have two lines to look at. The red one is thread extract, and the green one is, let's say, the background, the blank of what has been as contamination in the extraction mixture, and what is the background of the LCMS system. So we have a good overview, which are real peaks coming out by extraction, and which ones are only contaminations. And there we fixed on roughly five peaks. The peaks are named as numbers, and let's go now through these, which are very clear to identify. Next, please. The first peak, ID number 3, is choline. Choline, you see the reference spectrum, and in the black rectangle we have the reference spectrum in the black angle, and the sample spectrum in the other one. And we see both the base peak, the precursor ion, and the fragmentation is identical. So we are relatively safe that this is a real finding, and is clear that this product is in the extraction. Next slide, please. If we go now to the SDS of this product, choline is very described in the chemical book as a very toxic substance. It's also corrosive. It can bless skin, and it's flammable. Interesting wise, in the Wikipedia, choline is used as an organic compound, precursor molecule, but it's always coupled with another substance, maybe acetylcholine. Then it's a completely different mass. That means that the OH is replaced by OCOCH, this one at the end. So this substance was identified, and is really that based on both spectra we have from the sample and from the reference database. Next one. We came to peak ID number 9. That is the mass spectrum whole. It has a mass of 250 positively charged. Next slide. And these are, unfortunately, we couldn't identify not a single hit or a single structure for these peak. Three structures are more or less possible. We called it number 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. The first one is lauric hydroxide. Then we came to dihexyl nitrosamine, and then we came to isopropoxypropyl methylpiperazine. Next slide, please. For the first one, We found lauric acid hydroxide is risk and safety is data are irritant. And if you look further in the ECHEMI database or supplier, they have no information. It's only used for industrial and research, and no data concerning all these GIs labeling elements. So we don't know how risky this substance really is. Next one. That's 9.2 is something which is really difficult, because nitrosamine are well known as carcinogen. If you look at the group in the middle, and we get more information on page number 34, again, no data available, and only used for industrial applications. Next one. This is the piperidine derivative. Again, no data available concerning the hazard labeling, and no information why it's only used for industrial. It's used. It has been found and it has been applied in these fibers, and we don't know how difficult or how difficult it is to get if you get in contact with it. Next slide. That is peak ID number 7. Mass precursor iron is 229. Next slide. And again, we have 3 proposals because we don't have a clear MS structure. It could be dotted urea. It could be, again, a nitrosamine, or any other amine derivative. All have the same masses. And next slide, please. We go through what is known. Dotted urea is something which is used as an enzyme inhibitor for controlling the insect population. It reduces the development and growth in insects. Maybe it's part of agriculture or a pesticide applied anywhere. And what is also interesting is it's worldwide not listed, not in the European community, not in China, not in Hong Kong, not in Korea, without United States. There are roughly 162 citations, but they're all, let's say, studies with that no GIHS labeling is known. Again, industrial research use and no data. Next one, please. And this is again something which is a very difficult, nitrosamine. There we really know that is causing cancer, and especially this substance, the N-methyl N-dodecyl nitrosamine, gave 2 results where it has been studies made with rats, and in both cases was found that the bladder in the rats were caused by tumors tumors or cancer. These two, especially this substance is known for this, and the group is there, so we know that is very carcinogen. Next one. This is the 3rd substance of this mass. We haven't found anything. There's no MSDS or SDS available, and even the substance is registered with a CAS number, but nothing else. Next slide, please. And this is an overview of all what we have found in the LCMS, roughly 137 compounds. The green ones are all these which are different from the blank, from the background, which is caused by the LCMS, or which is caused by the contamination by the extraction mix, because I have to say one, we used very pure extractions, but with extraction materials, extraction solvents, because in analytics and into trace analytics into trace range, it's really important that you have pure substances. But anyway, MS is so sensitive and so extremely high sensitive that you even found in analytical absolutely poor solvents something. And therefore you have the comparison. The green one is something is only into extraction, and all the other colors may come from the background of the system, LCMS system, or by the solvent. And we ended up with, let's say, seven substances. 5 can be we have identified, and the rest is still unknown.
Yeah. Good. That's it.
That's it, yes.
That's very good. Just a moment. Thank you so much, Hansjörg. Appreciate that. All right. We're coming to Jay. Hey, this is your turn. You're going to tell us a little bit now about the history and about this environmental modification theme. So you're very well experienced. Tell us all that you can, and I think you can also share the screen.
Okay, I have one comment quickly for Hansjörg. On your ICP-MS analysis, I noticed you left out silicon. And that's very important whenever you do an ICP-MS analysis of an environmental sample, include silicon and aluminum, because there's a fairly well-established ratio of silicon to aluminum in the environment. It's based on the crustal abundance in nature. And if you have a ratio generally around 3:1 aluminum, silicon to aluminum, it's indicating crustal enrichment of any contamination. So that's how environmental scientists tend to rule out, or at least establish a norm of general environmental contamination.
A great example, or I was going to say real quick, a great example of that is like Saharan dust, which constantly blows across the Atlantic. If you don't rule out silica and its ratio to alumina, which nobody does this. So, I mean, in the chemtrail community, they show their aluminum content, but they never test for silica. So understanding that 3:1 ratio means that it's mineral dust and it's more than likely sand. If you don't test for silica, then you cannot even make that determination. So I just want to reiterate what Jay's saying, that if you don't understand that like Saharan dust, things like that get blown up into the air and then they land as far as California. So that's something that people should all be aware of. Sorry to interrupt, Jay. Just want to reiterate.
Just one remark, you are right. But I think in general, the elements, the range is not more than 300 ppm. It's not a tremendous value of any contamination based on minerals. So I think it's a normal environmental picture, not anything special. Huh?
Yeah, in this case, I'm really mainly referring to, in general, people that do rainwater sampling, especially. They're only sampling for aluminum, barium, and strontium. Those are the what they call the signature of geoengineering. I have had tests made in the same environment as other tests made by the chemtrail water analysis. And when you included silicon, the results came back with the normal 3:1 ratio. So it's important that that people know about this. So I'm going to go ahead and move on into some history. So the first thing I'm going to show, everybody see this?
Not yet.
No. Here we go again. Let's see. How was that?
There we go. It's
Okay.
coming.
So right now, what I'm showing you is a copy I made from the very first day of the idea of chemtrails. So you'll see this is from September 17th, 1997. That goes back 28 years. Wow. And I received this email from a man named Richard Fink here. And Richard was confined to a wheelchair from a very early age. He seemed to be a normal person otherwise. However, he was associated with another man who had some very bad history. The other man's name was Larry Wayne Harris. Now, this report from Fink said that samples had been taken of contaminated fields in Maryland and Pennsylvania that contained ethylene dibromide, and that is a pesticide, and it's in jet fuel. There's a problem. Ethylene dibromide was used in leaded gasoline, in aviation gasoline, and in regular gasoline for many years. It was banned in 1983, which he states. However, ethylene dibromide was never a component of jet fuel so far as I've ever heard. And ethylene dibromide, if it was in jet fuel and it was burned, it would be vaporized. It has a it evaporates very easily. Anyway, Richard Fink, I asked him about the samples, and he had no sample analysis to give me. So that went on for many years, and there was never any confirmation about this idea of ethylene dibromide. However, if you look online where people list possible components of chemtrails or geoengineering, they will often still put in there ethylene dibromide. So that's an example of how an element can come into a controversy, and even though it's never confirmed for 28 years in any way, it remains. So one thing builds on another, and old information that should have been discarded continues. So moving on, in 1999, a fellow named William Thomas, he's from the US, but he lived in Canada. He took up the story, and he did some journalism, and it got the attraction of a late night radio talk show host named Art Bell. Art Bell was famous for telling lots of stories late at night that would attract people that were lonely, looking for something to do, and listening to the radio. This is one example of a report by William Thomas from 1999. So that's 2 years later. He says, "Stay indoors, take cover immediately. I have a photo of freezers full of bodies in England." Well, here we are 28 years later, and we never saw those freezers full of bodies. William Thomas also spoke about, in general, his idea was that he had hundreds of photographs of US Air Force tanker planes. Those are refueling tanker planes that had their tail booms extended, and they were spraying fuel, evidently, or whatever, out of the tail boom. I ask you, have you ever seen a picture like that? Out of the hundreds he claimed he had, I offered to pay him for the pictures, and they never came out. So that's another little short thing, even though everybody could see, even with the naked eye, that there were two parallel trails coming from the plane, lining up with the engines. He kept insisting that tail booms were spraying something in the air. Now, later on, I want to tell you about the story of how barium got into chemtrails lore. Barium is always tested for. Everybody thinks that barium must be involved, but it had to start somewhere. And it turns out that a man named A.C. Griffith was an employee at the post office. However, he convinced a number of people around 2003 that he was former national security agent. He came up with the idea of barium being part of chemtrails. His experience in the military many years before, when he was young, was as a radio operator, and he felt that barium was being used. He came up with quite a few websites that he showed. However, they really weren't saying what he said they were. They were all about ducting of radio waves. However, there was never anything that he could actually point to. That's a point to make about whistleblowers. Whistleblowers have to actually come out with something that you could confirm or point to a person, place, thing, something that would have a what, where, when series of points that you could confirm. If a whistleblower only just tells you a story, that's nothing you can go by. You can't use that. And it actually would be to his detriment to give you a story, but not any facts that you can confirm. It would be easy to say, this scientist or that scientist, point to a person, point to a place, on such and such a date, this was done. That could be confirmed or denied. But when they just give you a story and no real evidence you can hold on to, it's usually a self-serving whistleblower. They're doing it for personal reasons, aggrandizement. It could even be a hoax. Many times it's a hoax. And you have to not give very much stock to a whistleblower like that. It turned out years later, after A.C. Griffith passed away, he was older, he had a heart attack. His son found out about what he had been saying. And his son came out publicly and explained that his father was known for telling big stories, tall tales that weren't true. It was something that he did all of his life, and his son was well known, public about it. So that's how, another example of how when we get an idea into a controversy and we don't solve and pin it down, it carries on. And so I would say that's over 20 years, people have believed that barium is part of geoengineering, but it really has no basis in fact. So those are some things that I can tell you about the history. I've been skeptical from the very beginning. And one of my main points was that in 2000, I actually got access to flight tracking software. It was not publicly available. I had to talk my way into a copy of the software and permission to use it. However, I eventually identified trails in the sky, and over and over and over, I identified those trails as coming from ordinary passenger jets. I was not able to identify anything that was other than that. As well, the times that I saw these trails in the sky, they were coincident with atmospheric conditions that would be normal for contrails. And I want to point out one little tool that I have found. This is a website called earthnullschool.net, earthnullschool.net. And I have it pulled up right now showing Europe. And what you see on this this white area here is a highly saturated area. I'll click on it here in Spain, and we have 100% relative humidity. You'll see the humidity right here. 100% relative humidity over this part of Spain. But let's move over to southern Italy, and we have 29% humidity. This is a very easy way to identify areas that are prone to having normal contrails, because the atmospheric conditions are showing, I'm showing atmospheric conditions at around 30,000 feet, not on the ground, it's specifically around 30,000 feet. So I can search around over here, for example, Eastern Europe, you could see we're at 1% relative humidity. And just so that you can see how I set this up, this is the control panel. I set it for air, I set it for wind, I set it for 250 hectopascals, and for relative humidity. 250 hectopascals or millibars in US we use, that corresponds to the atmospheric pressure at more or less 30,000 feet. So this is a quick, easy way that you can get your local conditions. And this can be done anywhere on Earth. I can go all the way over to my area in Florida. I can do the same thing in Florida. I can pull this around. It's very easy to use on a phone, and it gets the information very quick. So I can see that this area is right at 100% relative humidity. So that's what I have for right now. If anybody wants to ask questions, they can, or I'll move on and pass it on to Jim.
That's great, Jay. Thank you so much. I think we're just going to go on with Jim. Jim Lee, you can take it from here, my friend.
All right. Buckle up, Buttercup. Now, before I start, I just want to make it clear that I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. I'm going to go through it very quickly. So if you want to be able to find this stuff, or if you find any of this controversial, you don't agree with it, you can go to connect.climateviewer.com. All of my websites are linked there. My Substack, where my latest news comes out. And right below that, you scroll down, you'll see the Telegram chat. Jay is a member of my Telegram chat. Reinette is a member of my Telegram chat. I'm pretty sure Christian is lurking in my Telegram chat. So if you want to engage with us, I encourage you to do so. All questions are acceptable. Insults taken with a grain of salt. I encourage you to join. And this is a breaking news announcement that basically coming soon to a website near you, chemtrailfacts.com, where I'm going to take everything that we're discussing here today and about 1,000% more and create a website that's going to document this. It's going to tell you the history, not just what Jay just went through of the people who have built this narrative, this false narrative. All of the loud mouths who've said things they couldn't back up with any evidence whatsoever, and how we got to this position, along with the history, both commercial and military, to the present. So look forward to that in the near future. So I want to go ahead and start by clarifying that one of the very first articles I wrote was called "It Was a Conspiracy: Military Experiments on Unsuspecting Public." Now, the reason this is important, I wrote this in 2013 because I want to acknowledge that to everybody out there, I know about Operation Popeye. If you don't know about weather warfare over Vietnam, then you clearly haven't done any work. Operation Ranch Hand with spraying Agent Orange. There were actually many agents. They were called the Rainbow Agents. People only talk about Agent Orange for some reason. But in total, 19 million gallons of herbicide sprayed on our troops. This is one of the very first articles I wrote on the topic of chemtrails because the chemtrail people came for me. I was a geoengineering and weather modification activist. I wanted to ban the things, and everybody in the comments kept saying, but Jim, my chemtrails. And I said, okay, let's investigate. So then we go on to entomological warfare programs like Operation Big Itch, Big Buzz, Mayday, Dropkick, and many different examples of dropping mosquitoes and fleas on unsuspecting public and testing things like that. But then the big one was the zinc cadmium sulfide sprayings, which occurred, I got a total here, pretty much 1952 through, I think, the latest I've seen is like 69, close to 1970. So 52 through 70. And one of the big ones was Operation Large Area Coverage, where they literally took C-119 flying boxcars and basically flew from one coast to the other, dumping radioactive material on the public. This was part of what was called the U.S. There's a picture of it right here. The U.S. Army Chemical Corps radioactive release test, behavior of aerosols within cities. This was to mimic fallout from a nuclear war, and they wanted to see, how did the radiation do? How did it do? Well, here's an actual map from one of those experiments where in a poor black neighborhood where this is a elementary school. They set up a dispersion plume on the ground to irradiate poor black people in St. Louis, and then later on go and study their thyroids and see how much they ingested. Well, it turns out they did not admit to this till 2008. So I want to reiterate this point from the very get-go. Governments, militaries, they do experiments. They don't admit to them for decades. From 1952 to 2008, this was not public knowledge. I acknowledge that. The CIA's involvement in weather warfare. The CIA was involved in Operation Popeye. The CIA was involved in Operation Mongoose, in addition to steering hurricanes into Cuba, causing drought in Cuba, weather warfare on Cuba. The CIA funded the climate intervention studies in 2017 called Climate Intervention. The CIA interviewed Dr. Alan Robach, who said, basically, I got a phone call from two men who said they were consultants for the CIA and they'd like to know if some other country was controlling our climate. Would we know about it? I told them I thought, yeah, but at the same time, I thought they were probably interested in if we could control somebody else's climate, could they detect it? This is straight from Alan Robach, who you're going to see in just a few minutes, is one of the most prominent geoengineering scientists on the planet. So if the CIA, which I like to call the Climate Intelligence Agency, has John Brennan at the Council on Foreign Relations saying, I'm very interested in stratospheric aerosol injection, well, that's kind of important because they have a long storied history of involvement in weather warfare. Why? Because of plausible deniability. You can't prove they did it. So now I've given you multiple examples of secret government programs and even the Climate Intelligence Agency and their shadiness. Now let's get to the real facts. Oh, by the way, the U.S. Air Force admits chemtrails, adulticide. I went on Del Big Trees the High Wire, and in a throwaway line, I mentioned that people send me pictures of pumps and pipes, and the pumps and pipes look like this. And they're always misappropriated. So I get these photos, and I'm like, I mentioned on Del Big Trees the High Wire, this is the modular aerial spray system from Youngstown Air Reserve Base. They have an aerial spraying unit, and that green line you see there is not a contrail. That is pumping chemicals out. That is an herbicide. So just like Agent Orange, you're looking at Agent Green right there. By the way, Agent Green was also used in Colombia to kill cocaine crops in the 90s. It was called Plan Colombia. It's a mycoherbicide, a fungus that kills cocaine crops. That cocaine crop killing chemical migrated from Colombia through Mexico into Texas and was found in the brains of cows and in corn in Texas. You cannot make this up. So it didn't just happen in the past, a long time ago. We're talking a funded operation in the 90s. Here, they basically, you know, when I mentioned this on Del Bigtree's show, their team went and actually obtained FOIA records, 2,400 pages. So they actually followed up on what I told them. Kudos to Del Bigtree and his crew. So they got the FOIA documents. Now we know for certain that all of these chemicals are being sprayed, and you know, like dibrome, naled, tordon, anvil, duet, trumpet. The list goes on and on. Okay, so all these chemicals are being sprayed on you, and you know nothing about it. That being said, let's talk about weather modification geoengineering, because this is really what we're here for, right? Yeah. So knowing where it happens and when it happens and how it happens is important. So I put together an infographic called 10 Technologies to Own the Weather Today. These are the 10 technologies, the top 10 technologies to modify weather, modify temperature, and modify space weather. So we're talking about weather modification, geoengineering, and space weather modification. Ionospheric heaters like HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Sounding rockets, which dump things like trimethyl aluminum, barium, lithium, strontium, cesium-137 coming out of the satellite up here. It's called the CRES. Chemical release from the CRES satellites. We have lasers on the ground which can induce cloud seeding. They basically create ionized clouds that help it make it rain. They can steer lightning bolts with lasers from the ground. We have cloud ionizers and cloud seeding from ground-based sources. Like number 5 and 6 here, both release, you know, cloud condensation nuclei. One uses silver iodide, the other uses negatively charged ions. They're on the ground. Then we have stratospheric aerosol injection, which is way up here. We also have ship tracks. We have contrail-induced cirrus, which is the clouds you're seeing over your head, except ship tracks are way bigger. And they're over the ocean. They cover the entire ocean. Then we have water vapor pollution from things like wet surface air coolers at nuclear power plants and coal factories. These water vapor plumes, once they hit a storm front, make massive clouds. Nobody even talks about it. So that's why I created weathermodificationhistory.com, so that people could actually have a credible source of all this information, along with, you know, being able to see the history of weather warfare, how, you know, Lyndon Johnson said, "He who controls the weather controls the world." All of those fun things, frequently asked question pages, the world's largest compendium of weather modification patents on the internet. Just come up here, type in hurricane, and bam, you'll have a picture of hurricane modification systems. And all of these, this is a Taiwan. So like each one of these is a different one. This is US, but these are all of the weather modification patents worldwide, not just American. In addition to that, we have a newspaper vault of over 800 newspapers, which you can go through, created by my brother from another mother, Dominic. And you can just go flip through it. And this is starting at 1800. So when you start looking at these and you're like, producing rain, 1891. For those that don't believe weather modification is real, that it has a 100-year history, this is the page you literally just send any noob to and you go, get wreck. I have all the proof. Here it is. And then it just starts to get really crazy really quick with things like producing rain with X-rays in 1919. You got your hail cannons. You even got crazy stuff like electrified sand coming out of biplanes. Yeah, from the moment we were able to fly, we were already trying to control the weather, even before that. So most people are completely unaware of this. And then finally, the interactive timeline where you can literally see the entire history of weather modification. You could spend a good month getting lost just in this, or you could just sort it by category. I just want to know about geoengineering, weather modification, space weather modification, or you get into the tags like, I just want to know about weather warfare. How about you just tell me about weather warfare and show me Freedom of Information Act requests, things like that. Also, there's links to climateviewer.org where you can see all of the weather modification projects worldwide. So as you can see here, I have in red, these are cloud seeding generators along the mountains. And this is up here, this is Idaho Power Company. All of these are provided by Idaho Power Company. And what does a cloud seeding generator looks like? It looks like this. We have the fancy remote controlled solar panel version, modern thing. Then we got the redneck version of a cloud seeding generator where grandpa goes out there, flicks his bic and makes orographic cloud seeding for snowpack augmentation purposes. Source of this information, straight from Idaho Power. You know, they own it, they operate it. If you pay your power bill in Idaho, you are paying for weather modification. I think that it's incumbent on people to understand who's actually funding weather modification so that you realize that you're paying your money to the power company in Idaho. And if you don't like weather modification, I suggest you go down to Idaho Power Company while your senator, your state reps are trying to ban weather modification and geoengineering. Go straight to the horse's mouth. So with that being said, all of these are weather modification reports from the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972, where you can see the Carson Walker Project, operator, Desert Research Institute, paid for by the state of Nevada. So operator, who did the weather modification, who paid for it, and what they were doing. Snowpack augmentation, over 3,200 square miles. So these are all, you know, actual weather modification projects worldwide. And it's not just a one-off. These are all across the globe, including China, literally covering the entire Tibetan Plateau with 100,000 cloud seeding generators. This project right now started in 2018. There has been no information out of China, and anybody surprised by that is an idiot. But this is destabilizing weather on a worldwide basis because of the number and size and the altitude at which they are doing the cloud seeding projects. The effects of this are worldwide. Nobody's talking about it. So we really need to understand the difference in terminology. Cloud seeding and weather modification, we have ground-based cloud seeding. We have cloud seeding flares from planes. We're talking about 1,000 to about 20,000 feet. That's 0.3 to 6 kilometers. We still roll with feet over here. I know the whole world just thinks we're weird, but we're all like, what the hell is a kilometer? So I was friendly and I put it in both. And again, Dominic Marama, the guy who made all those newspapers, I literally drew on a sheet of paper right before going live on a video. And I was like, I want this. Like, this is what I want to show people. And within 45 minutes, he whipped this up for me. So credits to Dominic for making me this awesome freaking infographic in less than 30 minutes. So the ground-based cloud seeding generators, which you can see down here at the bottom, this is an AHOG's cloud seeding tree. Over here is a cloud ionizer, an example of the ones that release negatively charged ions. Lasers and marine cloud brightening is a type of geoengineering that is done from the surface. All the way up here at 60 to 90,000 feet is stratospheric aerosol injection. The purpose of geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection is to block out the sun by whitening the sky. And the reason you want to release these chemicals at that altitude is because they will persist for a much longer time. If you were to dump the exact same chemicals below this dotted line, which is called the tropopause, that is the dividing line between the troposphere and the stratosphere. Anything down here is only going to persist maybe 2 weeks maximum. And that's being generous. Anything above this line, 2 weeks to a month, right here along the line. And as you go up to 90,000 feet, we're talking anywhere from 2 to 4 years before those same chemicals make it to the ground. So the reason why stratospheric aerosol injection hopes to get it as high as possible and dump it at the equator is because of our, like the Hadley cell, the Farrell cell, and, the mixing zones of our atmosphere. Basically, when you dump those chemicals at the equator, they're going to make their way to the poles. So when you're watching planes at 30 to 45,000 feet, they're not part of what David Keith and Ken Caldera envisioned for a geoengineering project. Planes fly at 30 to 45,000 feet. We're going to get into how that also is geoengineering, but it's not the same kind of geoengineering that David Keith and Ken Caldera and Bill Gates want. And Bill Gates is still taking advantage of all that. So the people involved is the most important thing here. This is on weathermodificationhistory.geoengineering. So let's talk about them. David Keith and Ken Caldera, top 2 geoengineers on the planet. I mentioned Alan Robach earlier. This is the guy the CIA interviewed, and Ben Kravitz. He studies a whole bunch of things about how geoengineering would change rainfall on a worldwide basis with computer models. This was back in, I want to say, 2014. Who was the largest funders of geoengineering? The National Science Foundation in the United States for geoengineering research. Fund for Innovative Climate and Energy Research, FICER. This is where Bill Gates put money in a slush fund for David Keith and Ken Caldera to give to other scientists to write papers. Oh, who are the 2 largest writers of papers at that time? Ken Caldera, Alan Robach, Ben Kravitz, Peter Irvine, and up here's David Keith. Now, this was from 2014. As I said, I always give references to everything that I say because I want people to be able to go and review it for themselves. So this is today. This is, when people say just the federal government, oh, it's USAID that's funding geoengineering. Nothing could be further from the truth. You need to understand the complexity of all of the people who are involved in this. So we have Bill Gates right here with his, Gates Venture and Pfizer, which I previously mentioned in the last thing. Open Philanthropy. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's George Soros. SRMGI, the Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, is no longer called SRMGI. They are now called degrees.ngo. You can look up their website, degrees.ngo. The Silver Lining Project with Kelly Wasner and all them. This is marine cloud brightening. These are all the people involved in that. NCAR is one of them, obviously. And you can go all the way through this. FCEA, Forum for Climate Engineering Assessment. All of these are different things. Then you have China over here with their program. Germany over here. This DFG is, I believe, German also. Yeah, green is Germany. So I have a color code and everything and shapes and all that, what they are, private firm, think tank, hourglass, NGO, all that. So this is the big picture. And David Keith just left the Harvard Solar Geoengineering Research Program after getting his butt kicked by the ETC group. And he is now teaching at the University of Chicago. So there's much more on these pages, like why you should, oppose geoengineering and who is opposing it. 27 reasons to ban geoengineering versus 6 reasons why it's a good idea. This is the kind of information that you need to be armed with if you're going to talk about this subject, because if you don't, you really don't know what you're talking about. Videos included on all that. Why solar radiation modification will kill people and the rest. I could go on for days about that. But when Bill Gates asked Ken Caldera or David Keith, look, man, what's the bottom line? How much will this cost me to get chemicals to 60,000 feet? Right there. If I need to zoom in, let me know, unless you guys can clearly see that.
It's good.
He said, with large cargo planes, Boeing 747-400s, I only need 14 planes. If they're Boeing F-15s, these are fighter planes, we could do it with 133 planes. We can do it with 66 private jets, 24 C-17s, or 28 Rockwell B-1B bombers. And then specifically on the 14 747s, They would need to be modified. They would need bigger wings. They would need different fuels with bigger engines. All of that would have to be modified to get that plane up to 60,000 feet. There's going to be an ironic turn to all this by the time we're done. So when we're talking about the needle in the haystack, every time the geoengineers were asked, what would it take to geoengineer the entire planet? We're talking around, anywhere from 14 to at the most around 100 planes to geoengineer the whole planet. And at 90,000 feet, that would only need to be done twice or maybe 3 times a year. So you would never see these planes at that height. This comes from cost analysis of stratospheric albedo modification delivery systems with Justin McClellan, David Keith, and Jay Apt from 2012. This follows the Aurora Flight Sciences report, which was in 2010. So that's where the money hits the road. So what are we actually seeing, and how does this relate to chemtrails? Well, everybody always says, but my aluminum and my barium. Well, I went looking for the aluminum and barium, and I found it in the jet fuel. And what I did was, this is just a visualization. I can give this to you in text. I can give it to you in a periodic table. I can sing you a song about metals in the sky. But at the end of the day, this is what was detected coming out of the exhaust pipe of a jet engine on a runway. Period. There is no arguing about this. This is science like Hansjörg was doing, single particle mass spectrometry on jet exhaust. What did they find? Richard O in chat, will there be a replay available to these talks? Yes, brother. Encourage you to share this with other people. Hit the pause button, go find the page, read the paper yourself, and then come back and unpause it. That's what this talk is for. Appreciate you in chat. I'm watching chat. I can't help myself. So the detected metallic compounds were internally mixed with soot particles. So you have to understand that what's going on here is that when you burn any kind of jet fuel, it's going to produce what's called black carbon. Now, black carbon is soot. And inside of that soot are all the metals that we're finding in the rainfall samples, all the metals associated with it. Chromium, iron, molybdenum, sodium, calcium, aluminum, vanadium, barium, cobalt, copper, nickel, lead, magnesium, manganese, silicon, titanium, zirconium were also detected. So right here at this colon, these were the most abundant, okay? Those were the most abundant chemicals found in jet exhaust. Now, I have many other sources of this type of information. How is this geoengineering, though? How is it that jet fuel emissions, these particles, are geoengineering? That was found by the Indian Space Organization. What they did was they flew up to 60,000 feet. And when they actually sniffed the air around there, the Indian Institute of Science and the ISRO Vikram Sarabhi Space Center say that they now have evidence of such particles. Black carbon, says it right here, airborne black carbon, which is soot. Evidence of black carbon particles existing up to 18 kilometers, translation for the rednecks out there, 60,000 feet into the stratosphere, and there are about 10,000 black carbon particles per cubic centimeter. That is an alarming number. And many people would speculate, hey, this has nothing to do with, planes and jets. No, given the shape and location of these particles, they argue it could only derive from emissions from aviation fuel. This is the, paper on that. It was published 2017, possible climatic implications of high altitude black carbon emissions. This is what's whitening the sky. Geoengineering was never about making clouds. It was about whitening the sky. If you look at your sky and you look at the horizon, it's milky white almost all the time, at least from where I'm living at in Sumter, South Carolina. Tell me what your horizon looks like. Take a picture on a clear day. take a picture and send it to me. Send it to me on @ClimateViewer on X. Join my Telegram chat. Hell, here's my email, jim@climateviewer.com. You will see the same thing I'm seeing no matter where you're in the world, because geoengineering is a world problem. So let's do a little bit of science, because people don't understand the chemtrail science behind this. Fuel, CnHm plus S, ideal combustion. Now, a lot of the debunkers out there would say, hey man, this is just water vapor, dog. There's no, it's just harmless water vapor. But that's in an ideal combustion scenario where everything is perfect, everything is completely vaporized. This would be perfect. Yes, you produce water vapor when you burn jet fuel, but real combustion, CO2 plus water plus nitrogen plus oxygen plus NOx plus HC plus CO. Oh, what's that? Plus C soot plus sulfur X, let's say SO2, sulfur dioxide. Why does C soot, carbon black, or black carbon, it's elemental carbon that is burnt, black carbon, soot, and sulfur. Soot and sulfur are really the two main culprits in all this, because they directly contribute to aerosol creation, sulfur does, and the soot directly creates to cloud creation. So what are aerosols and clouds? How do they affect climate response? And what's the climate change of that? What are the impacts of all of the above? Agriculture and forestry, ecosystem, energy production and consumption, social effects. That's a real nice way of saying people losing their freaking minds online about planes making clouds. I'd call that a social effect. Damages, welfare loss, monetary units. So this is from evaluating the impacts of aviation pollution and climate change. And they're just stating the obvious that, yes, I'm not really curious about, I don't care very much about the CO2 column. I'm concerned more about this cloud column, just so we're all clear. And we understand what's going on there. So also from 1988 through 1996, there was a marked change in all of the world. And I found this to be highly suspect. NATO came up with this thing called the single fuel concept, where they switched from JP4, which was, for anybody who doesn't know, it means jet propellant, jet propellant, jet propellant for JP4 to JP8. So they went from JP4, which was a 50-50 blend of gasoline and kerosene, to JP8, which is 100% kerosene. This transition was the idea that they would put the same fuel in the planes as they did the tanks and the Humvees and Jeeps and all of that. So one fuel for the battlefield, one fuel to rule them all. What's up, Dirk in chat? He's already dropping bombs. Another one of my favorite researchers on the world, Dirk Elstout, is in the chat right now. Y'all follow him. So the point being, this NATO conversion between 1988 and 1997 coincides with what Jay just told you earlier. What was the first little email chain about? It was about JP8 jet fuel. It was in 1997. Is it a coincidence that from 1998 to 1996, the year they completed the conversion to JP8, that suddenly there was allegedly a big change in how many contrails were persisting in the atmosphere? I don't know, you tell me, but it seems like going from close to, because it's very similar to JP5, from 5,200 parts per billion of calcium to 31,000, that's 31 parts per million of calcium. That's a huge increase. And then here's your aluminum. Most planes fly on Jet A. This is commercial aviation in America. The rest of the world flies on Jet A1. If you don't know this, now you do. And you go through the list of chemicals, and on this particular sample, there's a whole lot of not detected. This is from a U.S. Air Force Research Lab study in 2000. I've got many new studies, and Jay and I are both trying to come up with the best summary of what's in all the jet fuel types and try to come up with a global estimate of how many nanoparticles of metal are being lofted into the sky in the stratosphere. But that's neither here nor there today. Oh, but yes, barium is in there. Look at that. 3 whopping parts per billion. 9 whopping parts per billion and 38 parts per billion of barium. The more abundant version source of barium in jet exhaust emissions actually comes from engine lubricants. So greases, oils that are used in the turbines themselves. So there's actually less barium in the jet fuel than there is in the lubricants that are, keep the engine, like you put oil in your car. You know what I'm talking about, guys. Anyway, so you look at all these numbers, sulfur is the number one, the thing that I focus on. So I want to reiterate that geoengineering, like David Keith was talking about back here, that is, they mainly focus on 5 chemicals. It's sulfur, aluminum, calcium, titanium, and diamond dust. Every peer-reviewed paper you're ever going to read on stratospheric aerosol injection, Max Bliss, my brother from another mother, is in chat. Wow, we're blowing up here today. I sent this to everybody I love. God, Max, we got to do an interview, brother. So the 5 main chemicals for geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection will always be that, because they are trying to mimic volcanic activity. Sulfur in volcanoes, the biggest example of this was in 1991. Mount Pinatubo erupted, and they got really excited about that. Why? Because it put a lot of sulfur into the stratosphere, and sulfur has a cooling effect. So that's the reason why in diesel fuel in tractor trailers, the EPA regulated it from 500 parts per million down to 0.15 part per million. Why? Because sulfur kills people. In 2020, the International Maritime Organization banned bunker fuel or heavy fuel oil because they said they wanted to reduce the sulfur emissions from international shipping. Now, the geoengineers immediately started complaining about that, but regardless, that didn't change anything. And in the EPA, the limit for jet fuel is 3,000 parts per million for sulfur. So when we talk about the amount of sulfur that just every single plane burning jet fuel is lofting into the stratosphere, it's got to be astronomical. We're talking about 10,000 black carbon particles per cubic centimeter at 60,000 feet. And as Reinette showed in that image earlier that I created from the Air Force, that sulfur increases the number of aerosols coming out of a jet plane. Not now, Max. Yes, I remember talking to Steven Salter. Let's not do that. That sulfur not only increases the number of aerosols, but sulfur creates nucleation mode and coats black carbon. So the soot gets wrapped in sulfuric acid. So all of that black carbon that they found at 60,000 feet is covered in sulfur. So in essence, planes are doing stratospheric aerosol injection, and it's reaching 60,000 feet. That's where they found it. So why would they go and modify all these planes to fly up to 60,000 feet when commercial aviation is already doing this? Another real tell to this big problem we're seeing is the vast increase in the number of flights. So when you look at 2004 and you're seeing that 23 million flights worldwide, not including military flights, it jumped to, right before COVID, 40.3 million flights per year. I don't know that most people can actually visualize that, but it looks like that. So this is right now, as we're speaking, live on globe.adsb.exchange.com. That's Alpha Delta Sierra Bravo adsbexchange.com. And when you look at this, this is the world as we're speaking live. All of the planes flying all around the globe. Now, you can drill into this, but basically what you're going to see is every single one of these pink planes is flying currently in the stratosphere. You can just go look. This one's currently at 47,000 feet. It's color coded. That's why I like it. Oh, by the way, for all those who want to have fun, click the U button and you can see the military flights that they don't show on any other flight tracker in the world. Don't believe me? That's a C-17 right there. I can look at the outline of it and tell you that's a U.S. Air Force C-17. That is a C-130. Bam. C-5. Bam. You can just come in here and look all day long. All the military flights as well. Not all of them you're not going to catch like the fighter planes, but the point is still, when you look at this in totality, this is what's currently in the air right now. And when we're talking at more than 100,000 flights per day, that's insane. So when you do the chart, it goes like this. 1997, there were 1.46 billion passengers per year. NATO just had completed its conversion to JP-8. There was a big change in the atmosphere. Obviously, somebody noticed it and decided to monetize it by going on about how NATO JP-8 was going to kill everybody on the planet with ethylene dibromide. By 1999, when William Thomas was appearing on Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, we're at 1.56 billion passengers per year. And then it's off to the races. As Christian pointed out, the Lehman Brothers crash right here, where we see it flatten for a moment. We're at 2.49. And then finally, we're up here to 4.49 billion passengers right before the COVID hit. And then Jay Reynolds here in chat went and did the due diligence of like figuring out what the numbers were. And now we're at 8.69 billion in 2023. Good on you, Jay. I saw that in the Telegram chat too. Reinette beat me to the punch, and I'm like, don't worry, I've got that in here too. My Telegram chat is lit, guys. You've got to join it. T.me/climate viewer chat. So when we're talking about this kind of exponential growth, I want to point out one other thing that most people do not consider that is part of this chemtrail narrative. In 1997, when this started out, we were on Windows 95. I don't know if y'all know that. You know, like when you have to put this into perspective, that after Art Bell and his conversations with William Thomas in 1999, 2000 through 2003, we still didn't have any social media. But in 2006, we had Facebook, we had some Twitter, we had all kinds of ways now to share these pictures. And we had phones, cell phones invented right around this time too. First iPhones and things like that. So this just exponentially grows. And as right about here in about 2012, we start to have peak social media experience with very cheap phones, with better resolution, more people sharing this information. So is this actually a Mandela effect where we all just say, hey, I remember blue skies, it never used to be this way? Or is it actually that because of social media, because of more access to the instant ability to share things, that we're all seeing this simultaneously? I think that there's some role to play in the social aspects of the ability to share information, to share videos from around the world. If you don't consider it, you're not considering all the facts. I like to try to at least try to be impartial when I'm trying to understand a thing. So what are the evidence? Evidence of clear sky daylight whitening. Are we already conducting geoengineering? This is from Chuck Long from NOAA's Earth Systems Research Lab. This is not a conspiracy theorist. He's backing up what I just told you, that Chuck Long is saying planes are making the sky white. Exactly what is he saying? He said this. Chuck Long suggests that high altitude ice haze created by water and other emissions. Other emissions means black carbon and all the metals I was just telling you about from aircraft is responsible. I'm talking about a subvisual contrail generated haze of ice, which we do not classify as a cloud, but gives the blue sky a more whitish tint. Chuck Long was essentially blowing the whistle on what we already knew. Well, some of us, because everybody doesn't know that geoengineering is actually sky whitening, not making clouds. But we're going to understand how clouds have a role to play in this also. So this is Chuck Long basically telling everybody, and for those who don't know how the weather modification history timeline works, I'm going to give you a quote and all that, and I'm going to show you where the quote came from. It'll scroll you down. It's got it all there, you know, so you can go get the original source, just highlight it and then go to it. I'll show you the original source right here. And then down at the bottom, I usually have an image gallery where you can see all the pictures and flip through them, where he got the data from. And he's like, ice crystals are not spherical. Then what the heck is this? So he's pointing out all the things. And in addition to that, I actually have the backed up presentations that he did. They're not available anywhere except on weather modification history. But this is the original post, Accidental Geoengineering, at CRES Science, colorado.edu. Airline traffic may help create icy haze that's brightening U.S. skies. The Smithsonian Magazine came up with a more interesting title, Airplane Contrails May Be Creating Accidental Geoengineering. I'm not thinking this is an accident at this point. I mean, we're way past accident at this point. And I'm going to prove to you that we're way past accident. So let me get it straight. This is just to summarize everything we've touched on up to this point. Solar radiation management is blocking incoming shortwave radiation. Earth radiation management is dealing with the trapped long wave radiation that does not make its way back to space because it's blocked by cirrus clouds. So heat trapped at ground by clouds that make a blanket. Well, they call that a cirrus cloud climate dial. So Ulrich Schumann said, I want less warming, more, there's your intentional word, intent, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. He said this at the ICAO Colloquium on Aviation and Climate Change 2010. I interviewed Dr. Rangasai Halthori, who's in charge of doing biofuels for contrail control. I said, what did Ulrich, your boy, mean by less warming, more cooling contrails? He said, we would like to have more contrail-induced cirrus clouds down here during the day and none during the night. Now we're getting specific. We want more contrails turning into cirrus clouds during the day and none during the night. And the contrail cirrus clouds that are created during the day, we want to make sure that they're actually cooling the planet, not warming the planet. So how do they do that? In that Biden report that everybody, cites, they look at it and they say, well, the Biden White House authorized geoengineering. Well, if they'd have read the very first page, which none of them did, it says that they want to study 3 types of geoengineering: SRM, MCB, and CCT. Now, unless you're a historian like me and you really understand all this stuff and nerd out on it, SRM, solar radiation management, MCB, marine cloud brightening, mentioned that earlier, and the final one, CCT, cirrus cloud thinning. What is cirrus cloud thinning? I could read this whole quote to you. I'm going to skip it. This can be achieved if seeding, cirrus cloud thinning is also known as cirrus cloud seeding, like with bismuth triiodide to melt the clouds away, is limited to high latitude winters or nighttime seeding. Clouds by day, none by night, less warming, more cooling contrails. Oh, and by the way, all of that soot and all that is making the sky whiter by coming up to 60,000 feet from where the planes are flying at max around 45,000 feet. All of this is occurring. This is all proven. So after blowing the whistle on Bill Gates' idea to do all this, they created contrails.org to just admit the quiet part out loud. Why not? I mean, I've already told on you. So they say we can drastically cut aviation's climate impact. This is called mitigation of non-CO2 emissions. But in reality, they're showing you exactly the same. Now they've updated their graphic. I have the original on my Substack. They've updated their website now. Looks pretty much just like the graphic I just showed you, right? You got reflected rays up here at the top, and then you got trapped rays down at the bottom. This is what happens. Earth's radiated heat back to space cannot occur when you have a cloud blanket overhead. That's why at nighttime they want to let the heat out, but they want to cool during the day. And they want to make sure that the clouds they make aren't too full of soot. So they made this map.contrails.org, which shows you exactly what I'm talking about. So as you can see here, these are blue. They're cooling contrails. But as the sun goes down, they become warming contrails very quickly. Shows you right here. These contrails have a net warming effect by trapping outgoing thermal radiation. Cooling contrails have a net cooling effect by reflecting incoming solar radiation. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Do. But some of these are still burning up hot. So even during the day, you have a mixture of cooling contrails. And I'm going to stop using the word contrails at this point because even that's deceptive. If it's a chemtrail or a contrail, once it fans out and blocks the sky, it is neither a chemtrail nor a contrail. It is a cirrus cloud. If you do not understand that part, you miss the whole plot. This is where people use semantics and words to control your mind. This is climate control via contrail formation that persists into cirrus clouds, and they want to be able to have less warming, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. This is the predictable for operational planning part where they actually show contrail forming regions, potential contrail forming regions. I got pretty fast internet. I'm hoping it'll show it. May not even work right now, honestly. They keep breaking their map and I break it for them. And anyway, you can see it over the day. They don't even have it on there. So I'll show you those. So anyway, I wrote this article. It's on my Substack, basically explaining this was what Ulrich Schumann came up with, the contrail cirrus prediction tool. This is where he said less soot emissions, less warming, more cooling contrails predictable for operational planning. His words, not mine, 2010. Well, you go on to hear that basically Bill Gates started that map you just saw is called Breakthrough Energy. And who's in charge of Breakthrough Energy? Bill Gates. Who invested in it? Bill Gates put $2 billion in himself, but also includes Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, Richard Branson, George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg. These are the funders of Breakthrough Energy. And who is their chief scientist? Ken Caldera. So I wrote this article bringing him out on this. And what did they do? They deleted the page that had Ken Caldera on it. So what did I do? I had to archive that bad boy to make sure it didn't disappear. This is breakthroughenergy.org/our-team/Ken Caldera, and the senior scientist at Bill Gates Breakthrough Energy happens to be Ken Caldera. Guy who said contrails have nothing to do with this, but is currently in charge of helping people make cooling contrails. I find this ironic, not surprised at all. Why I founded Breakthrough Energy by Bill Gates himself. Why did he do it? Then I asked two climate scientists, Ken Caldera and David Keith, to educate me about the climate. And what they showed me was astonishing. We could fake volcanoes and cool the planet. And after talking to Ken and David, I couldn't get climate out of my head. I read the latest studies and reports. I watched video lectures on Earth's changing climate and physics by physics professor Richard Wolfson. I read Weather for Dummies. Well, shit. Excuse me. Well, now you're a weather expert, Bill Gates. You should probably throw some money at geoengineering the whole planet because you talked to two geoengineering scientists. This is, you cannot make this stuff. This is Bill Gates in his own words, admitting exactly what I told you from the get-go. He created Pfizer to give money to Ken Caldera and David Keith to hand out to other people to mimic volcanoes to block out sunlight. And guess what? Commercial planes to the tune of 45 million flights per year are whitening the sky. This is undeniable at this point. So are we transitioning towards net zero? Are we actually fulfilling Agenda 21 without ever having to design some special platform to loft the chemicals up there? Even though there are companies like Stardust Labs, which are an Israeli startup to currently be a defense contractor to do geoengineering for governments once they pass geoengineering governance. I'm not saying that there aren't companies out there and private contractors or possibly the CIA adding more chemicals to the stratosphere. I'm telling you, you got no way to prove it, neither do I. How are we going to catch these people? Let's stop worrying about those needles and start worrying about the haystack and everything that I can prove. That's called being pragmatic. So how can you do this yourself? I wanted to give you guys a tool that you can use yourself, and you can go to windy.com and download the Chemtrail Finder plugin. Because the only way that you could, I cannot convince you of anything. You have to convince yourself. So my goal for you right now is to give you a tool where you can go, should I be seeing contrails or not? Now, if I click on the map right here, it's going to tell me 40,000 feet, minimal contrails may be seen, and that's all the way down, okay? So we're seeing that together here. All these little check marks underneath this. This is called the Schmidt-Appelman criterion. This is using the whatever model I currently have selected down here, the forecast model, and it's based on what's called radiosonde data. I'll show that in a second. I don't want to like get off this, but basically like where I just clicked, I click here. You'll see minimal contrail seen. If I click on the actual radiosonde plot, it'll look like this. I learned how to read this thing. Thank you, Jeff, and my admin, my mentor, our chief meteorologist at Climate Viewer Chat on Telegram. And basically you have temperature on one side, you have relative humidity on the other side, and this is the vertical column. So as you go up in millibars, this is up to flight altitude, going all the way up to about 42,000 feet. So you can see where contrails should be forming and where they should not. Clearly out here right now, it's not looking so hot. Now, if I go right back here, I can close that out. I can click menu. For you guys to be able to do this, hit install Windy plugins, grab the Chemtrail Finder. After you do, it'll show up on the sidebar right here, and then I can just click on Chemtrail Finder again, and then I can click anywhere on the map, and it'll tell me. Now out here, minimal contrails may be seen, short possible contrails at 39,000 feet, 35,000 feet, longer contrails possible, 34,000 to 33,000, longer, possibly persistent. So this is why in just a couple thousand feet difference, you're going to see different types of clouds forming. That's what we need to be able to recognize, okay? We need to be able to recognize, is this atmospheric science? Is this intentional or not? So unless you can rule out that the plane is currently flying in an area that's going to create contrails, then you're not doing your due diligence. That's all I'm saying. We had some earlier today, long, possibly persistent, from 45,000 all the way down to 35,000. Pretty much every plane is where I live here in Sumter, South Carolina, right here. And yeah, we've had it get nailed all day long. And sure enough, it's persistence all the way down. Every cloud that flies through my sky today, it's not a spray day, guys. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If you need to know why it's a spray day or a not spray day, go and do the research yourself. Try out the Windy plugin. Understand what Schmidt-Appelman criterion is if you want to get in the deep end of the pool, or just take it easy and just use the Chemtrail Finder plugin. Validate it with your friends. Go find a place where it says there should be no contrails. Call your friend up in that state. Tell them to look up right now. What do you see? And when they tell you blue skies, you're going to nod your head and go, that guy was right. And I've been testing this over and over for 15 years. This is accurate. Just remember that. This is accurate. So how can you actually see the chemtrails? This is the RAM-B slider. I'm on the EU MedSat's dust product on the GOES 18 West. These are long linear contrails, these black lines you're seeing right now. So you can go and you can zoom out and you can see that this is the entire world, okay? But you can use this dust product to come in here and actually see where are my chemtrails? Where are they at? Go verify it. And then you can go to the what's called day cloud phase, which will actually show you in the same area what altitude those clouds are by color code. So you have water at surface, land surface, snow surface, glaciating cloud, low water cloud, thick high ice cloud, thin ice, high ice cloud, thin mid water cloud. So when you look for this red color, that's your cirrus clouds all the way at the top, unless it's nighttime. And during the nighttime, you're going to see a totally different thing. And you can change around the world just by flipping, you know, from the satellite from the GOES 16 to the GOES 18, 19, and the Japanese Himawari, which will take you around to the other side of the earth. Sometimes it gets stuck. You have to refresh it. As you can see, here comes the daylight. It'll show up. But right now, that's kind of boring because it's nighttime. So we'll go back here to this one. I'm going to hit F5. I got that super fast internet. Don't get jelly. But then you can come in here and you can actually see what the colors of the clouds are and what height they're at. So all of these are tools that you can use to validate what I'm saying. And then after you go and you validate that, what the atmospheric conditions are, then you can just go hop back to globe.adsb exchange or your personal favorite flight tracker and go, well, how's it looking over Sumter, South Carolina? Dang, I can barely even see South Carolina in here. Here we go. That's Charlotte. So right over my house right now is a whole, boy, I think the military's coming for me. Yeah, there's a lot of helicopters and planes flying overhead right now. But anyway, this is my neighborhood right now. Okay. And do we have chemtrails in the sky? Yes. And I can go and look at what altitude they're at. This is literally at 20,000 feet. Those are flying pretty darn low right there, actually. These are not. So you can tell by the color code, purple, perfect area for contrail formation, light blue. As you get down into these light blues and greens, these are usually small aircraft that are flying relatively low. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I do have a solution for actually being able to tell the difference between this weather warfare and other, other things. I'm not going to show them how to do the filtering of the flight levels, Jeff. Like, I'm way overdue at this point. Climateviewer.com/NMOD, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, is one way that we can deal with weather warfare with all of these secret government programs by requiring and mandating disclosure of all atmospheric activities and creating sensor networks to detect stuff in our rainfall. Similar to what Hansjörg is doing, actually run the tests on the things falling out of the sky. And that way we can trust but verify. I'm not the trust but verify guy. I don't trust anybody. So I'm all about verification and transparency. This is one way. Another way is what Reinette's working with, about petitioning the EPA and the Clean Air Act. And I want to kind of end with this. Right now, in over 25 states in America, we are attempting to pass geoengineering and weather modification bans. I am all for that. Tennessee already passed that ban. Now, if I go to Tennessee on any given day, they are still covered in clouds, and people are scratching their head as to why. This is why I focus on this jet fuel, and a lot of people think, I've seen it everywhere. They say, Jim believes they're adding it's jet fuel additives that they put in the fuel to make these clouds. No, that's not, you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. Pollution from jet exhaust creates clouds. If you want to talk to your local representative, don't try to be a citizen scientist and use words you don't understand. Keep it very simple and say, I do not like planes making clouds blocking out the sun. Nobody can debunk what you're saying. Nobody can call you a conspiracy theorist. Be direct. Use simple words. I'm tired of having no sunshine because of all the planes flying overhead. Can you figure out why they're doing this and how to stop it? The only way they're going to be able to, you're going to be able to stop geoengineering, even though I love that all these some states are trying to ban it, is you have to ban it at the federal level. Geoengineering, David Keith, Bill Gates, intentionally creating planes to go up there and dump chemicals. Only the United States, federal government can ban that and then back it up. Why? Because no state can actually go up and ground a flight. No state can go up and shoot down a geoengineering plane dumping chemicals. That would be illegal. However, if the United States says geoengineering is illegal and would be a violation of the weather warfare ban of 1976, it would be an NMOD treaty violation. Every government of the world is going to be scared. Why? Mexico, the entire country, banned geoengineering, and there's nothing they can do about it. And David Keith said, even though they banned geoengineering, I don't know how they could enforce it. Furthermore, they can't write legislation that says airplanes cannot put sulfur into the stratosphere because commercial aviation's doing that every day. So to Mexico, I appreciate you banning geoengineering. What are you going to do about it? If somebody's geoengineering, you're going to throw burritos at those planes? I don't think so. So we have to be pragmatic. We have to realize who can actually do something about this. And the NMOD treaty is one way. The Clean Air Act is another way. Freedom of Information Act requests obviously are a good way to try to get more transparency about any type of, climate change related SRM activities that may be going on with NOAA, with the ESRL, with the CIA. But sans that, we know pollution is a problem and it's causing these clouds. We can start dealing with that today. So I'm being pragmatic. Let's focus on the haystack, and then all that'll be left are needles. I hope that you guys found this informative. I think I just made it through all my slides. And again, I did. That was my last slide.
You did great. You did absolutely great. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it. Wow. I'm going to just go on and because we are running a touch late, but Reinette, I'm going to start with you ladies first again. Why don't you take and give us your closing remarks, Reinette, and take it from here, please.
I will do so by wrapping up with really kind of following up with what Jim had to say. This is not a silver bullet solution whatsoever. I think that Jim really demonstrated the complexity of what we're dealing with. And ultimately, one of the things he was identifying is that how the persistent contrails or planes making clouds are at different levels, all according to atmospheric conditions. Now, there is and has been research on contrail avoidance. So there is a possibility where we could use this contrail avoidance so we don't have those persistent contrails. I think it's only between 5 to 10% of flights, overall flights, that actually create the persistent contrails. Now, granted, while you could use this as a tool to help us and assist us, it could also be used as a weapon, and you can create these cirrus clouds. So that is a possibility. So that removes the cloud layer. However, what it doesn't do is remove the soot that Jim was really talking about, which is really dangerous. And as he had well demonstrated, these are all the heavy metals we find in jet fuel. These are some of the things it's doing. Is declining all of our wildlife, pollinators, bird populations, bees, you name it. It's having impact on human life as well. So this is the thing. It'd be great to reduce the cirrus clouds, but we have to actually address the commercial aviation. And one of the things that really struck me, a couple months ago, was when Jim said that 75 to 80% of the worst flights are the short haul flights. That's 3 hours or less because of the takeoff and the landing. And when I found out that those flights are the ones are the worst regarding the release of the soot, we realized that we had to do something about that. So Also, we have all the anti-geoengineering legislation going on in all these states. That's great, but they're dealing with the needle in the haystack, not the haystack. And since 1963, there's been no updates to the Clean Air Act whatsoever. And so what we've done, and we're ready to actually file this week a petition for rulemaking to the EPA, to the California EPA and the FAA, to say, look, you need to update your Clean Air Act. We have a serious violation going on, and it's killing all of life. But now we want to talk about another silver BB. The truth of the matter is, look at folks, we're going to have to reduce our short haul flights. There's no other way around it. It doesn't matter if you clean and refine the jet fuel more and more. As long as those numbers of flights rise, you're going to have the cirrus cloud making and the changing of our weather. So what we're really doing is we're also addressing through a white paper the transitioning of America from short haul flights to high speed magnetic rail. And we've identified, thank you through chat, all the different major thoroughfares with our airliners, how we can actually use railroads below those flight paths and actually invest over 35 years. It's going to be 3.5 generations to actually invest in the magnetic light rail and get ourselves from using the short haul flights and instead transitioning into the rail. And ultimately, we will be able to clear our skies and actually make them healthy. And as Jim also said, clarity cause, the ENMON solution, that's what we need to do. And you can find us on saveourskies.org. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Christian, and everyone else.
Well, fantastic, Reinette. I'm going to come to you, Jay, for your closing remarks here for our participants.
Yeah, what I'll say is that over the years, I've noticed there's a great resistance to people changing their beliefs. And once you get a belief established, it's very hard to change it. There's a few suggestions. If you believe something very strongly, go ahead and connect with someone who doesn't believe the same as you. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to discussion. Don't wall off and build a silo where you live inside and can't receive new information, because none of us know everything, and we all can learn. I've learned a lot. I'm actually an engineer. I've never taken a class in psychology or sociology in my life, but I've learned a tremendous amount about people by being involved with this. And I have found some people who are able to understand and move on. In some cases, they actually felt a lot better when they learned that some of the worry that they had been involved with really wasn't needed. Now, that may sound very strange to some people, but I still challenge you to look at the other side, and you don't have to accept it, but you might reduce the wall that we tend to build around ourselves by only listening to who agrees with us or who tells us what we want to hear. That's all.
That's extremely well said, Jay. I think we all very much appreciate that, because we spoke last night about it. We literally have people that are like suicidal out there. We have families, young couples that will not reproduce having children because they say they don't want to put any children in this environment. And so this is going really, really deep. And I think all the participants that are following us here tonight or later on in the recordings can take that to heart. So we should not live in this angst and panic without actually making an effort and at least watch this 2 or 2.5 hours of this webinar here and share that with anybody. So with that, I'd like to give Hansjörg the opportunity to give your closing remarks, because I'm sure this was also for you a great, past few hours to listen to this information.
Yes, it's true. I'm very impressed by the information and, let's say, the scientific and evidence-based facts which are represented here. And my conclusion is, if we can continue and support people who are doing such surveys and such, let's say, analytics and clear facts present, then we can maybe convince quite a lot more people that they are looking around and understand what is really going on and don't believe any, let's say, lies or any misinformation which is spread over the world, because we have people which are not interested in that the truth comes out. And our task is to support those people and include ourselves, that we find the truth and can get the information to the people, convince the people, and get a better environment and a better atmosphere around.
Excellent, Hansjörg, and I think you're touching a really good thing. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to pass around these images that we get in social media every day, you know, and every contrail is you know, a chemtrail, and vice versa. So I mean, this is why we're spending this time. This is why we're making an effort. This is why we're networking across the Atlantic Ocean. This is why we're, you know, putting the brightest minds together to come together and clear those misunderstandings and half-truths. So with that, Jim, I would like for you to give your closing remarks to this audience tonight.
I understand that, you know, I have empathy for a lot of people out there that are suffering from nephophobia. That means fear of clouds. In 2010, I was fully committed to the fact that chemtrails were a thing. And to Jay's credit, and also I'm going to credit myself, because let's be real, I'm the one who did it. I don't want to believe anything without confronting the possibility I'm wrong. And because as a public educator, as a person who's taken it seriously to be an activist, it is my duty to go and make sure that I'm giving accurate information. And I want to reiterate before I say the next line, this is not popular. If I wanted to be popular, I could lie to you guys all day, every day, and be filthy rich. I'm not doing this to get rich, to get the clicks. I'm going to do this because I was born with something and I will die with something, and that's called integrity. So instead of staying in my echo chamber with people who all agree with me on everything I think, I went straight to Jay Reynolds and Mick West at Metabonk, made an account and said, come at me, bro. And guess what? They chopped down a lot of beliefs I had. And at first, you know, you have this period where you go, well, that can't be true. And you go through the stages of denial. Everybody knows what they are. But eventually you go, okay, I know that secret government programs have existed and probably do today. And at the same time, I know that I can predict contrail formation with a 90% certainty. Which one is more important for me to focus on? If I can focus on the 40 million flights I can prove are making clouds that are blocking out the sun, then all that would be left is this tiny, minute amount of secret government programs. So you ask yourself in the audience, if you're watching this, if you've made it this long, you clearly care about this topic. Ask yourself this: who benefits from a chemtrail conspiracy? The airline industry, who's never been held to account for any of their environmental impacts. And every time we go down these rabbit holes, you know, chasing these boogeymen, I'm not telling you not to chase them. I'm telling you to also be pragmatic and look into what we're talking about here today, because living in fear is not good for you, and fear is a mind killer. It does not make you an effective activist. You will not be able to change the world. I intend to change the world by staring directly into the sun and saying, I want to see you again. So please, if you guys want your son back, be pragmatic about this. Understand that this is a pollution issue. People are taking advantage of it, and they're geoengineering our planet. Accidental or not, that's happening. So I agree with Jay completely. This is about, all of those people that I've known over the years, many of whom have died. Reinette showed that video at the very beginning, with where she was chemtrail free zone. I saw at the bottom, it said Patrick Roddy on that. I went and I testified at the EPA in 2015 with Patrick Roddy and Max Bliss, who's with us in chat right now. I'm pretty sure the last I heard, Patrick Roddy had passed away. Michael Murphy passed away. What in the world are they spraying? So many people that I know in this have died. And so many others that we've never heard from are out there having panic attacks and they're scared to go outside. We got to get to a place where we can pragmatically deal with this issue. So I want everybody to understand that's what this is about. Not to say you're crazy, everything you believe is not real. I believe those same things when I started doing this, and now I see nuance to everything. We're asking you to look for the nuance and try to find solutions. And if the people that are scaring you online that you're watching do not offer you a solution, they are not an activist, they're an infotainer. Recognize that. If you enjoy fear and you enjoy clickbait, understand that you enjoy that infotainment and you have every right to. But if you want to know who an activist is, they will be offering you at least some solution. It may not be the right solution. It may not even be a good solution. At least they're trying. And I will always give credit to those who try to come up with solutions. And if you don't like my solutions, you don't like Reinette's solutions, please come join our chat and offer a better solution. I'm all ears. I've changed my mind before on this. I will always have an open mind, and I'll leave you with this. Always a student, sometimes a teacher, never an expert. I haven't got it all figured out either. I'm learning more every day I do this, and I want to be able to get other people to understand you haven't got it all figured out either. Don't close your mind down to people who disagree with you. Be open to having that dialogue, because that's how we all grow together. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Christian, for having this. Thank you, Reinette, Jay, Hansjörg. I appreciate you guys. Everybody brought something unique to the table today. And Christian, you brought us all together. God bless you for doing that. Most people wouldn't even have the guts to have this conversation. Most people run from this topic completely. If you even say the word contrail, it's like saying the F word in church. And everybody wants to dive out of the pews like, no, he did not say contrail. We have to have a better conversation about that. Thank you, guys.
Tim, thank you. Thank you so much. Fantastic. So, well, we are at the end here. I would like to thank again Hoch 2 TV here in Switzerland. That's, doing the live stream worldwide in the English language. And I also like to thank 9MQ down in Italy. They're making an effort to get all the Italians rocking here. So with this, I would like to really special thank each of every one of you here in the panel. This is fantastic. There's many, many years of efforts being made to get to this point of experience and knowledge, and being able to share that with people that we will never meet in our lifetime. And I'm sure that what we've done tonight will travel far. And with this, I would like to announce that we will definitely continue on. We don't know exactly we don't know who exactly is going to be on the next, but like Reinette and I have been talking for quite some time, we are extremely solution oriented. So networking is a very big part, and observing what comes out of a webinar like this. Okay, how is the public reacting? And I think this is substance that we can share share with the mayors of towns, okay, with politicians, because now we actually understand what's the haystack and what's the needle. And let's focus on this massive airline pollution that we're dealing with. So with this, obviously we're a nonprofit organization. We depend on members and donations and stuff like that. So if anybody feels like this is the right thing to support, we're always very happy to get support. And I would like for everyone to make sure support Reinette Senum with Foghorn Express, your Substack, Jim Lee's Substack. I mean, you guys are writing fantastic information, and we will make sure the show notes that people will get access to your Substacks, your Telegram and social media, gateway. So thank you. Thank you, everyone that has been taking the time to follow us, and I wish everyone all the best health, and God bless. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.
I got to head out. Good
We'll
job,
let you
everybody.
go.
I got to go.
We let everyone go. Thank you so much. You guys did great.